The Machal volunteers came from all parts of the world, each with different military training backgrounds. The country for which they were fighting had barely been born, had barely had time to organize itself. The Machalnicks fell in with an army in disarray.
Well, we're back. Our topic is Machal. Now, as we've defined it before in our conversation today, Machal is really those who went to Israel from around the world and then Palestine to make it free.
Right.
You didn't have to go, did you, Lee?
No.
You
In fact, we were discouraged from going.
Who discouraged you? Family?
President Truman.
Oh, really?
He issued an embargo against weapons or all sorts of things and people from going to
We knew about
Israel.
the weapons, but never really thought about people, but you're right. Do you remember the moment in time when you said, I'm going to Israel, I'm going to join Machal, I'm going to fight for independence?
Yes, I do. There's a little story behind it. Living in our house was the son of a man who grew up with my mother in Poland. And he and his father had been living in Palestine. And he came to study at UCLA and stayed in our home. So he regaled me with stories of the Palmach and Etzel and the Stern Gang and the Haganah, which to me was fascinating. I had never been a Zionist, never affiliated with any Zionist organization, but I did hear about what went on during the Shoah. So between the stories and the adventure and the desire to see a Jewish country formed, that was the time that I decided I wanted to come.
And how did you make that happen? You just didn't go into your neighborhood recruit center?
There was an organization called Land and Labor for Israel. And through this boy, I got the connection and enlisted.
To get to Israel, you had to go by ship.
We left from New York on the New Amsterdam. We arrived in Le Havre, immediately went by train from Le Havre to Paris. And I thought, boy, I'll really enjoy some time in Paris. We went from one train station to another and right down to Marseille. And from Marseille, we went to a DP camp called Saint-Jérôme. We went into Marseille to see the Israeli consul to say, look, we wanted to get to Israel. That was our purpose. And he said, okay, you'll be on the next plane going down this weekend. The weekend came and went. No one came. So we went back to the consulate, and the consul told us, we had you scheduled on the plane. It was a TWA plane, but Truman has issued an embargo against any American passengers going on American carriers. So he said, can't fly there. So we said, well, we want to go. He said, just so happens there's a boat. Well, he said it was a ship that was leaving in the next week, and we could go on that ship. So the next week the trucks came, picked us up, and we went to another camp called Grand Arenas, where about 400 of us boarded the trucks and went to a port on the coast near Toulon. And there we boarded the boat. Turned out to be a boat, not a ship. About 4 days out, we hit a storm. So they sent out an SOS. No one came. And at that point, we felt we're going to have to abandon the ship because it was about half filled with water. So we went to the one lifeboat. 400 people went to the one lifeboat, and we found the lifeboat was already filled with, we had about 35 Eastern European DPs. They filled the boat right away. The rest of the passengers were Moroccans. So we saw we couldn't do anything with the lifeboat, but the Moroccans kept screaming to save the children. Well, after inspection of the lifeboat, we found it wasn't seaworthy. So, and then I learned for the first time the word nes. Nes in Hebrew is miracle. The storm passed us. And we spent about 2 days pumping water, got the pumps working, pumping water out. And then we proceeded to sail.
But survived to be here today, which is
right. Well,
also another nest.
That's right. A few days later, we arrived in Haifa, completing an 18-day pleasure cruise.
Yeah, oh boy.
And that was how I got to Israel.
We'll be back with Lee Silverman as we continue our conversation about 804.